Okay, good morning. The reason I'm making this video is I woke up at 3 a.m. this morning in a cold sweat, realizing I never demonstrated the auto-leveling feature of my claw. I also wanted to make a recording of all of its features before I tear it apart, because I am rather proud of it and I would like to keep a record of it. So, the claw is currently in self-leveling mode. However, due to errors that compile as it runs, it cannot actually keep up. It also keeps coming unplugged because of how it is set up on my desk. However, it does do a rather good job of keeping itself level. Now, I also wanted to record why this occurred, and that is how I set up my controls. Now, they're not exactly as I set them up, but I did learn a lot from them today and yesterday. I have my roll still, and I have my grip. Now, the code I originally tried to run yesterday has devolved into a series of errors that make no sense to me. I have gone through them repeatedly and cannot come up with a reasonable explanation as to what happened to them. But my diagnostic code still functions, so I'm going to continue. Now, the main problem that I have with the self-leveling is that when I press the button to activate it, it shifts into self-leveling. However, it is still in the 5-volt reference. So then switching over to the 3.3 volt reference causes it to actually start self-leveling. However, in the meantime, between those two steps, it starts doing things that I don't intend it to do, as rotating one direction or the other. When I remove it from self-leveling mode, it will run to an extent, either a minimum or a maximum that I have allowed for in my code, based on what is the current settings for grip and roll. Now, that is nice when you just want to let go. However, it does also make it very difficult to get into self-leveling mode. What I should have done was, on these buttons there are 2 rows of pins that are each their own separate switch sides, so each side is independent from the other. They switch between different ends of the switch, so currently I'm activating this far edge and the middle pin, and when I press down it activates the inner edge and the middle pin connected. What I should have done is hung this switch over the side and soldered the wires that I have running to this switch that let me select a reference to the outside pins, so as I select my self-leveling mode, I also select my reference. Now, other things that I could have done better are my wiring harness, which is all telephone wire, which is very fragile and prone to breaking when twisted together, which causes apparently a significant amount of stress, and that several wires broke several times and had to be resoldered. I am, however, still proud of it because it took me a full day to build. I also cleaned up my pull-down resistors so that they are all nicely level with the board and do not run into each other and get knocked off. Other errors that I ran into when progressing through this project that I learned about is my original intent for the 10K potentiometer on my wrist. I was intending to use more of its range of motion to get my roll set to just the angle of my hand. However, this did not work because after installation I was limited to about 40 to 60 degrees of movement total on both. That's from one extreme to the other with my 0 in the middle. Now, the setup with the metal plate, I am very happy of how that turned out because it connected nicely to the wrist and it just kind of looks cool. I mean, look at it, it's awesome. I also learned that when I originally designed this, I was designing the buttons and things to be easily taken apart for when I had to return this. However, due to the nature of the switches and their tendency to jump out of the breadboard, I had to end up adding more and more hot glue until basically the entire top is now hot glued to some degree. There's only things that aren't hot glue on that surface are covered by the thread used to sew it onto the glove or the switches, which also have hot glue underneath them. Now, things I learned on this side are that the stress of the wires going into the pipe and holding on to the pipe caused my wires for the accelerometer to fatigue and break. This led to the drilling of this hole the day of the competition and the zip tying of these wires to that hole. My claw, I'm very happy about how that worked out. I have my 2 suction cup grips that I used to great effect in the ping pong ball challenge. The issue that I do have with these is that they were very, very customized. I was sitting there for about 45 minutes before the competition, hot gluing different sections of these to shape them to better grip a ping pong ball and let go. I doubt I could get them back into that configuration just sticking them back on, because I did this while they were on the claw. But it was primarily to give me an advantage of that competition, which they did, so I'm quite happy with how these turned out, but still little lesson learned on over-customization. Now, I did not get to finish the competition due to my arm rolling off the table and impacting the floor, catastrophically breaking the housing of the wrist servo. The servo still works, it just cannot be held down with the 4 screws anymore. There are only 2 screws broke off, and the other end of the housing has a large crack in it. The servo still functions well enough to turn, perform with me holding it inside, but that is about it at this point. I am happy with how the paint job turned out. It was my first spray painting job, and I'm happy with it. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun in this class, and I'm upset with myself that I did not finish the competition. I stressed myself to the point of muscular seizure, but I feel I did my best, and I'm happy with how it came out. Well, thank you.